After being excluded from Thanksgiving by his family, a man hosts his own gathering at his $5 million ranch. What follows is a powerful story of rejection, self-worth, and choosing who deserves a seat at your table. I, 32M, am an architectural engineer, and if you know anything about that field, you know it's about precision, load-bearing walls, and making sure the foundation can actually hold the weight of the structure. It's ironic, really, because for 32 years, I was the human foundation for a family that was structurally unsound. I grew up in a house in Ohio where my mother, 58F, was the self-appointed architect of everyone's lives. She didn't build things to last, though. She built them to serve her ego. My younger brother, 29M, was her masterpiece, a golden child who she protected from every consequence, while I was the fixer who existed to pay for the repairs. About 6 years ago, I realized that if I stayed in that orbit, I'd end up like my father, 60M, a man who has spent 3 decades nodding his head while my mother dismantled his dignity bit by bit. I moved away. I worked 80-hour weeks, started my own firm with 2 partners, and lived on ramen and caffeine while we built our reputation. Last year, we sold our majority stake to a massive international firm. I walked away with enough to never work another day in my life if I didn't want to. I didn't tell my family the exact numbers. I knew better. I told them I was doing okay and had moved for a project. In reality, I bought a 400-acre ranch in Montana. It's a $5 million property with a main house made of reclaimed timber, a private lake, a guest lodge, and views of the mountains that make you feel like you're the only person left on Earth. It was my sanctuary. Then came Thanksgiving. Now you have to understand the dynamic. Every year, my mother uses the holidays as a tool for emotional leverage. She decides who's in and who's out based on how much they've pleased her that year. I had been sending my father $4,000 every single month for 3 years because my mother had managed their retirement savings into a black hole of bad investments and my brother's failed business ideas. I did it quietly. I set up an automated transfer to my dad's private account so they wouldn't lose their house. I thought I was being a good son. I thought it bought me a seat at the table. 3 weeks before the big day, I called my mother to talk about flight logistics. I was actually planning on inviting them all out to the ranch for the first time. I wanted to show them what I'd built, but I didn't even get the chance to offer. "Oh, honey," she said, and I could hear that fake, sugary sympathy in her voice that usually precedes a knife in the back. "We've been talking. Your brother is having a really difficult time right now. His latest consulting firm didn't quite take off, and he's feeling very fragile. He looks at your life and he feels like a failure." I leaned back in my chair, looking at the snow starting to dust the pines outside my window. "Okay. So what does that have to do with Thanksgiving?" "Well," she sighed, "we think it's best if you don't come home this year. Your success is just too triggering for him. He needs to feel like he's the center of the family for a bit, so he can regain his confidence. Since you have so much money and such a fancy life, you can just go to a restaurant or something. We're keeping the dinner small, just the people who really need the emotional support." I was stunned. "You're uninviting me from my own family's Thanksgiving because I'm successful? Because I worked for what I have while he sat on the couch? Don't be so entitled," she snapped, the sugar disappearing instantly. "You have everything. He has nothing. Why do you have to be so greedy for attention? Let him have this one. Don't call your father and upset him about this either. He agrees with me. We need harmony, and you're a disruption." She hung up. I sat there in the silence of my $5 million disruption and realized that I had been paying the mortgage on a house I wasn't allowed to enter. I checked the family group chat. My sister, 27F, who usually stays neutral, hadn't posted in days. My father was silent. My brother, however, posted a photo of a $200 bottle of bourbon with the caption, "Finally some peace and quiet for the holidays. Family only." That was the moment the foundation cracked. I decided right then that if they wanted a small, supportive Thanksgiving, they could have it, but I wasn't going to spend mine at a restaurant.
I started making calls. I called my uncle, my father's brother. My mother had banned him from the house 10 years ago because she told her she was spoiling my brother and it would end in disaster. He was right, and she never forgave him for it. Then I called my maternal grandmother. She's 80 and sharp as a tack, but my mother moved her into a budget-assisted living home 2 towns over because she didn't want the clutter of an elderly parent in her house. I called my 3 cousins who had also been pushed to the fringes because they didn't bow down to my mother's drama. I'm hosting Thanksgiving, I told them. I'm sending a private car to pick you up. I'm flying you all to Montana, first class. I've got a guest lodge that sleeps 12. We're doing this right. They were all in. My grandmother actually cried on the phone. I just want to see you, honey. I'm so tired of that woman's games. The week of Thanksgiving arrived, and the ranch was buzzing. I hired a local high-end chef to handle the kitchen because I wanted to actually spend time with my guests. We had a 25-pound organic turkey, sides that tasted like heaven, and a wine cellar that I'd finally put to good use. On Thanksgiving Day, as we sat down to eat, the atmosphere was incredible. No one was fighting, no one was judging. My uncle was telling stories about my dad when they were kids, and my grandmother was laughing so hard she had to put her wine glass down. It was the first time in my adult life that a holiday didn't feel like a minefield. I'll admit I had a moment of weakness, or maybe it was just a moment of clarity. I took a photo. It wasn't a selfie. It was a wide-angle shot from the balcony overlooking the dining hall. You could see the massive stone fireplace, the long table filled with food and happy people, and the floor-to-ceiling windows showing the sunset over the Montana wilderness. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and went back to my dinner. I didn't check it until the next morning. When I woke up, the phone was hot to the touch. I had 64 missed calls from my mother, 15 from my father, and a string of texts from my brother that started with "cool house" and ended with "you're a selfish prick." The texts from my mother were a descent into madness.
King, you are a monster. 2 a.m. We're coming there. We're going to talk about this. You owe us an explanation. I felt a pit in my stomach. They didn't know the address, but my brother is tech-savvy enough to find property records. Montana property tax records are public. At 11 a.m. on Friday, my security gate intercom buzzed. I pulled up the camera on my phone. There it was, my father's old SUV, covered in road salt and grime. They must have driven 18 hours straight from Ohio without stopping. I put on my coat and walked down the long, winding driveway to the gate. I didn't open it. I stood behind the black iron bars. My mother jumped out of the passenger seat before the car even fully stopped. "Open this gate right now," she screamed. Her hair was a mess, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "It's freezing, and we've been driving all night." My father got out slowly, looking like a man who wanted the earth to swallow him whole. My brother stayed in the back seat for a second, then hopped out, looking at the stone pillars and the sprawling land with a mix of awe and pure, unadulterated greed. "Why are you here?" I asked. My voice was flat. "What do you mean, why are we here?" my mother yelled. "We're your family. We realized that the holiday felt empty without the whole unit. We came to reconcile. Now open the gate so we can get settled in. Your brother needs a shower, and I want to see the lodge." "You uninvited me," I said. "You told me my presence was triggering. You told me to go to a restaurant. Well, I didn't. I brought the people who actually care about me here instead. The guest lodge is full. The house is full. There's no room for you." My brother walked up to the bars. His eyes narrowed. "Don't be a jerk. We saw the Zillow estimate, man. 5 million? How many bedrooms is this? You've got plenty of room. Mom's been crying for 10 hours. Just let us in and we'll forget you tried to flex on us with that photo." "I'm not flexing," I said. "I'm living, and you're not part of this life. You made that very clear 3 weeks ago." "Son," my father said, his voice cracking, "please, it's been a long drive. Let's just sit down and talk like adults. We can figure out how to manage this place. It's a lot for one person to handle. We could move out here, help you run things. It could be a family business."
The audacity was breathtaking. They hadn't even been inside the house yet, and they were already planning how to manage my assets. "No," I said, "you aren't coming in. There's a town 10 miles back with a motel. I suggest you go there." "You're going to leave your mother out in the cold? After everything I did for you? I raised you. I gave you life." "And I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years," I replied. The silence that followed was heavy. My father looked at the ground. My mother's eyes darted back and forth. "I know about the allowance I've been sending, Dad, and I know Mom spends it before you even see the statement, but that ends today. You wanted a Thanksgiving without me. You've got a whole future without me now." I turned around and walked away. I could hear my mother screaming insults at my back, calling me ungrateful, calling me a traitor to my own blood. My brother started rattling the gate, but those things are built to keep out grizzly bears. He wasn't getting through. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they'd take the hint and go home. I underestimated my mother's sense of entitlement. That evening, while we were finishing a beautiful dinner of homemade soup and fresh bread, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up to the gate. I went out to meet them. "We got a call about a wellness check," the woman of the deputies said, looking a bit uncomfortable. "A woman called claiming you're holding an elderly woman, a Mrs. Grandmother's name, against her will, claimed she's being denied medical care and is in a state of confusion." I didn't get angry. I smiled. "Gentlemen, please come in. My grandmother's right inside. She'd love to talk to you." I led them into the great room. My grandmother was sitting in a leather armchair by the fire, drinking tea and playing cards with my uncle. When she saw the deputies, she put her hand on her hip. "Did my daughter call you?" she asked. The deputy nodded. "She's concerned about your safety, ma'am." My grandmother laughed. "The only thing I'm in danger of is eating too much of my grandson's cooking. That woman is a liar and a menace. I'm here because I want to be. I haven't felt this safe or happy in years. If she calls again, tell her I'm busy enjoying my life away from her thumb." The deputies were professional. They took her statement, apologized for the intrusion, and left. But as they were leaving, they told me that my family was parked at the trailhead about a mile down the road, and they had been trying to convince the officers to escort them onto the property to rescue the family assets. The next morning, the dirty tricks moved from the police to the legal system. I got a call from a guy named Miller, a local lawyer who sounded like he'd been practicing out of the back of a dry cleaner. "Mr. Miller, I've been retained by your parents. They are prepared to file an emergency petition for guardianship over your grandmother, alleging you've exerted undue influence. They are also filing a notice of interest on your property. They claim that the funds used to purchase this ranch were part of a verbal family trust agreement and that they are entitled to a 75% equity stake." I leaned back and looked at the ceiling. A verbal family trust? Is that what they're calling it now? "We have witnesses who will testify to the intent of the family funds," Miller said, sounding bored. "Listen to me carefully, Mr. Miller. I'm an engineer. I keep records of everything. Every cent used for this ranch came from the sale of my firm. I have the tax returns, the K-1s, and the closing statements. If you file a notice of interest on this property without a shred of documentary evidence, I will sue you personally for slander of title. And as for my parents, tell them I'm about to check my files." I hung up. I knew what I had to do. Years ago, when I was 18 and 19, I started getting collections calls for credit cards I never opened. I found out my mother had used my Social Security number to open 3 cards and a car loan for my brother. I was young, I was scared, and I didn't want to put my mother in jail, so I worked 2 jobs to pay them off. I never told my father, but I kept everything. I kept the forged signatures. I kept the original letters from the banks. I even had a recorded conversation from 5 years ago where she laughed about it, saying she did what she had to do for the family. In Montana and in Ohio, identity theft and forgery are serious business, and because I had been paying the mortgage on their house via my dad's account, I had a massive amount of leverage. I spent 3 hours with my own attorney, a guy who actually went to a top-tier law school and doesn't work off billboards. We drafted an email. I sent it to my mother, my father, and their lawyer at 2 p.m. on Saturday. The email included attachments, scans of the forged credit card applications from 12 years ago, the car loan with my forged signature, a spreadsheet showing every single dollar I had loaned them, paid their mortgage over the last 3 years, totaling over $140,000. The text was simple.
Parents and their legal counsel. You have until 5 p.m. today to leave the state of Montana. If I see that SUV on my security cameras or hear from your lawyer again, I am taking these documents to the district attorney in our home county in Ohio. I have already consulted with counsel. The statute of limitations for the ongoing fraud and the more recent financial elder abuse you attempted yesterday by lying to the police is very much active. Furthermore, the $4,000 monthly transfer to Dad's account has been canceled. I'm also calling the mortgage holder of your house, since I have the power of attorney Dad gave me years ago to help with his finances, and I am informing them that the third-party payments will cease. You wanted me out of the family because I was too successful. You've got your wish. I am no longer your son, and I am certainly no longer your bank. Do not contact me again. Any further communication will be treated as harassment and met with a restraining order. The reaction was instantaneous. My phone started vibrating so hard it nearly walked off the kitchen counter. My mother left a voicemail. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was sobbing, that loud, theatrical wailing she uses when she's lost all her cards. How can you do this? We'll lose everything. The house will be in foreclosure by February. Your brother, he was going to use the ranch to start a retreat center. You're killing your father's heart. Then my father called. He sounded broken. I didn't know about the cards, son, I swear. I thought you were just helping us out because you loved us. Please, don't do this. I'm 60 years old. I can't start over. I told him when I finally picked up, you chose her drama over my dignity for 30 years. You watched her treat me like an ATM and him like a king. This isn't me killing your heart, Dad. This is me finally stopping the bleeding on mine. Sell the house, get a small apartment, tell the golden boy to get a job at the Amazon warehouse. You're on your own. I blocked all of them, every single one. The rest of the weekend was surprisingly quiet. My uncle and I went out and chopped some wood for the winter. My grandmother sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, watching the eagles circle the lake. She told me she wanted to move to Montana permanently. She said she had some money tucked away from her late husband's life insurance that my mother didn't know about, and she wanted to find a nice place nearby. I helped her find a luxury assisted living suite in the nearby town, the kind of place with a 24-hour chef and a spa. She moved in 2 weeks later. The fallout back in Ohio was exactly what I expected. My mother tried to go on a social media campaign posting about parental alienation and how money changes people. But she made a mistake. She tagged my cousins. One of my cousins responded with a screenshot of the email I'd sent, including the forged documents, with the sensitive info redacted. The family friends who had been sympathizing with her suddenly went silent. The golden child brother actually had to get a job. Last I heard, he's driving a delivery truck and living in the basement of their new, much smaller condo. My parents had to sell the family home in a short sale because they couldn't afford the back taxes and the mortgage without my allowance. Sometimes I sit in my great room with a glass of scotch and look at the empty chairs. I feel a bit of that bittersweet sting, sure. You don't just get over 30 years of being the family's safety net. But then I think about that Thanksgiving dinner, the laughter, the honesty, and the look on my grandmother's face when she realized she was finally free. The structure of my old life had to fall down. It was built on sand and lies. But the new one, the one I built in Montana, it's made of solid timber and reinforced steel.
it can handle the winter. I've learned that the most expensive thing you can own isn't a $5 million ranch, it's your own self-respect. And once you buy that back, you never, ever sell it again. If you're wondering if I sent my brother a LinkedIn premium subscription for Christmas to help with his job hunt, don't worry, I wouldn't want to trigger him with my corporate success again. Subscribe for more stories of bridges being burned to light the way forward.